Good afternoon. Finally, I was going to do this much earlier. I was having a little computer technicality problems, and quite often I'll say that I have a bag of tricks figured out, but the real answer is I call Boise, and that's where my son. And then we do something, and he assists, and he takes over my machine. And so I finally was able to get the camera going. So I've been sitting here, I've been doing other genealogy stuff, but at the same time, I like to get some videos out there. So, it, you know, and I'm always telling you how I love doing this, but I think it's just so intriguing to me. So, like, kind of when we started doing this, like on the West Coast in Montana, we went to the Montana, and then we got out to Michigan, and that was where my grandma was raised, and all her brothers or sisters. And there was the seven kids, and those amongst those seven kids, as far as I can tell, I think grandma's the only one that was adventurous and ended up going out west. The rest of them are still um, out there. There's still people I can talk to that are related to the people that already passed. And so, but as I was doing this, I know, and I think I mentioned in my last video where we might go this next time, and I've been really wanting to see what this was about, was to actually go. My grandmother's father, it just says he was born in New York, and there was references to him, and he was kind of he had one of the kids had a store, like a grocery store, and the other ones were working as machinists, or they were working as out in lumber yards and cutting trees and stuff like that. And so that kind of trickled down then into Jackson, Mississippi, and then those people stayed there, and then grandma went the other direction. So today, well, it wasn't today. I think I probably started a couple days ago, and it's just been so fascinating to me. So I all my ducks in a row to be able to share the information with you. But so one of the first, well, I think Schenectady. I think I'd ran across Schenectady, New York, and there was some there a picture of a house where one of our ancestors lived, and quite immaculate house, huge, was historical looking. And there's pictures of them, and they were wearing like fur coats, and grandma always mentioned, that. And I still, I think maybe in Jackson they had some of that, but um, Schenectady was much bigger, and Albany was another one that used to come up. But then Oneida would come up, and I just remembered, Oneida being the manufacturing company that made silverware and all different kinds. I mean, they had silver plated. They must have been very creative from the standpoint. I know I was reading, and their business really took a slump during the two world wars. And so then they turned around and they started making other items for the war. And there was a list of things that they did, but it was almost like they were actually even making military vehicles. They were making military survival kits. They just, if you're not going to sell silverware and it's down, then to survive, they did that. So they and I didn't know for sure, like date wise or anything like that, but so Oneida uh, silverware was something that I was intrigued by that. And but then when I pulled it up, it came up and it said there was this large group of perfectionist, religious, communal society formed by a man named John Noyes, and a few other men helped him. And they had this building, and it was actually the building was bought by the silverware company, but um, after they kind of like dissolved this religious thing, but um, it was like free love. It was like everything that I can remember hearing about women's rights, and you know all it, the whole thing that we went through with the age of Aquarius, like in 68, 69. um, that's what they were doing, except they kind of carried it further than that because they believed that um, free love meant you could have sex with anybody anytime you wanted it, basically. But then on top of that, then they made all these different layers and all these different rules, and it was very intricately. It reminded me a little bit about some of the videos that I've watched on the Mormons and the control that they had over, it starts out one way, but then it kind of, and they still had all the women kind of doing the feminist type things. They do childcare and, they were kind of holding them down, but there was a couple women at that point that in this communal situation that they spoke up, and one of them actually was put on the board of directors finally. But and it was in three or four different states, but I think Oneida was the one that was the largest, and then it dissolved in 1881, and then the silverware company bought in the building. It was quite beautiful. Another one of those really historical looking. I think they must be built out of brick, and they're just what you think that you're going to find a lot of times, and in some places, the old stuff didn't last. Is probably what happened. Um, then it was interesting because today actually was having my technical difficulties. I went in and I started reading more about the Erie Canal. Now, the Erie Canal basically opened up the West by connecting all the boats, and all the people could go in these big long boats and be able to go away from and not have to go across the mountains to get to Michigan. And it was much more cost effective. And so people could afford it also. So there was this movement that direction. And on the other hand, and that would have been really close to, we had ancestors that lived in Oneida. And what this cult did was they actually hired some of the people in the community, and the community wasn't real big. Now, I haven't found any place actually that says that they were working with them, but they did hire people in the community um, to help in this communal and kind of try to push. It ended up, the article I was reading was like, it wasn't just them, it was like the Quakers, the Mormons, it became this upstate New York just reform. Everybody wanted to reform something. And so there was a huge women's movement. And so it wasn't just this whole thing with the Oneida one, but because I was doing genealogy and I found it. But we did have one living there. And I think eventually he left, but there was a lady there long enough to actually, she died there. And, I can't read between the lines completely to know, but I was just curious. I didn't see any, they don't publish a roster of who belonged to these cults. And it never got really, really big. But then when I heard today that, there was several of them in that same area. So it was just kind of where it was happening for that period of time. Um, Now, and maybe part of it was if they were feeling persecuted in the New England states, they could have now with the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal played a huge part of, that's when they used to be able to, everybody had, all the little communities had their own newspapers. And so now there was this way to get all the news and everything to these other states out there that weren't developed. And one of them, was where the ancestors were before they left New York. Now, as I went through a lot of that, though, I did find out some other information that was interesting because it looks like on the maps that some of the people might have just come up from Massachusetts. And I'd always heard that these people that were our relatives were coming through and landing, and then they were in New England for a short period of time in Massachusetts, and from Massachusetts they went to New York. But it was interesting. But at that point, when I started to find the people, that were related to that were in some of the bigger cities. Um, they were very, very, very educated. One of them, the one that I think was the most interesting, Harris Henry Conant, and he went to Harvard, and there was several different documents about him being a very prominent citizen, and he was a lawyer. He, was kind of, a lot of it I put in ancestry.com so people could see. But when it's prominent families like that, they do write up and have a lot of literature that goes with it. Now, to me, it sounds more like they might have come up through Massachusetts, but maybe there was another way to stop through the Erie Canal and come down. Then, if you look at a map, you could come down into Massachusetts because they were kind of around Albany and Schenectady and see, and I still got to Herkimer yet. That's the one that I want to do because of the diamonds. But I thought this was, really quite interesting to see the cultural difference between, the people who were going out and the wilderness adventurous people that went out and just had to deal, and these people didn't seem to move. Now he died young. It was really a shame because he was a very businessman, pillar of the community. His obituary was huge. Um, he was sent off, but he was only like maybe 67 or something like that, and he died of cancer of the stomach, and it said cirrhosis of the liver, and then also he had had the flu, which was kind of interesting. It was the third contributing factor to his death, but that's still kind of a young age for as prominent as he was, and not putting himself out there into some of the wilder areas to deal with. It was just he was much more into the civilized aspect of it. So I'm anxious to get more information about him and his family, and then around in that area of Albany and Schenectady. Now, one of the other things was um, when I started looking at the pictures of how they built the Erie Canal. Also, I mean, I think it was like it still is, but back then it was like a something that nobody else had in the world, and so a lot of people still go up there to take the ride in it, and but it really did. Gives you that much more of a Western movement. I mean, there are those points where, people are getting away from, even on the East Coast. I think a lot of it was so populated that people were looking and wondering, like maybe we need to go and move on. And then it was interesting, especially these ones that, from Albany to Schenectady, uh, into Oneida, and then from there they would have been very, very close to catch the water again and then go about their business over into Michigan. It's still kind of a ways, and I don't know. It's still the transportation is always fascinating to me. I was watching a movie last night, and it was in Montana, and it was about 1920 maybe, and they had cars, and they were, but most of them had it's just, I don't know. I just love history, so I like to see, how it flows and how it changes. Um, so the other thing that was really interesting to me, so this Francis Henry Conant. Well, number one, too, he also um, had this big company, and they were making like all kinds of expando-y stuff, like plastic type stuff. And he was another guy that just kind of kept changing his product and changing it. For a while, he was doing suspenders, but he had a large manufacturing, and he sold it somebody named Houghton. And so I looked that up and I followed the history of that, and they, really, really a prominent type company. But So we'll have to go back in time now a little bit, back to when I was reporting about the priors and the two ladies that disagreed about the priors. And the biggest complaint for the one lady is that she wanted it this way, her way and her decision how it was. And the whole reason was she wanted to join the Daughters of the Revolutionary people. What do they call it? Yeah, the Daughters of the American Revolution. And I looked, they have a 152-page volume of all the people who so far had been able to. You have to prove a lot of things in your lineage, and um, I don't know for sure exactly what they're doing right now, but I know for a long time there were, well, scholarships was a big thing to help people that were in, anybody that served in. Now I always heard of the Daughters of the American Revolution, but I was really surprised because they have a U.S. Sons of the American Revolution, which makes more sense to me. And it's a membership. They had a membership and an application even online. Um, and this Francis uh, Henry Conant was very actively involved in that type of community service and helping other people. But I think it's interesting that I feel a little bit surprised, I guess, just to see the contrast of what we've seen, and go back to Montana to the Irish and what was going on there, and then follow it through back now to Massachusetts. So I don't know, what's coming next. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you all about, and I'm getting a lot of views on my videos. And in fact, the last video was the highest number of views that I'd had. Now, there's a subscribe button, and I personally know for me, I when I would watch a video, I would never subscribe. I don't know. I don't know. I was just really hesitant to do it. I didn't understand, if all of a sudden I was going to get dinged for money or what it even meant. So, and I think that there's people out there like me, like I was, and I'm very careful now. I don't subscribe to a lot of things unless I'm really interested in it. But what the deal is that the YouTube actually will pay me a pittance. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but they pay if they use this, my videos, to be able to advertise. So if that's what it's about. It's kind of between them and me, and then, but it's all based on how many subscribers I have, and my subscriber level is inching along. I mean, I probably can name the people that have subscribed, and I know the new people too. I wanted to mention it to everybody, as a reminder. But then, if you're new, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe, and it'd get me closer to the point where, and there's another thing I'm doing right now by you. It has to do with advertising. It has to do with Ancestry.com. So eventually, they will pay my dues, and when you're retired and have Social Security, a little change wouldn't be so bad. Um, if you have any questions about that, um, any of it, please. I have a couple of people. As soon as I post the video, they're notified because they're subscribers, and then they put a comment in. Now, I don't know, I know where I see on my computer, but that's by me being the person who's making videos. But there is a place for comments. So if you look all over the screen and you find the place for comments, I greatly appreciate any feedback or anything. If you want me to delve into something more, I'm loving the research aspect of this. And I pick and choose a little bit because that's the way it's going. But um, you can leave me a comment. The other thing is that you could email me, and I thought and thought, and I just don't know. Someone tell me, Mom, but if you have pencil and paper and you're watching this, you could send me an email. It's MMCDONALD. So it's M for Marcia and then McDonald 524 at gmail.com. I will ask my technical people how I could do that, because I'm sitting here other than holding up a sign with it. And I'm also actually been working on a couple different things that um, is family branching is the domain name. And so right now I basically bought it from GoDaddy, and eventually I want to get another website. Have one website with my beautiful jewelry, and I want to get that out there too, so you know where you can look for that. And what else? Oh, and one was for um, one's .org, and I'm using it for correspondence. So then you could just know you can type it right into, and then you can get an answer back and forth. I know that in Ancestry, that's always been a bit of a struggle ever since I've been with them, and they would say it too. In fact, one of them was giving a presentation the other day, and she said about every 20 people she notifies, one may respond. And I would like people to know this is available. And I noticed there was something new on Ancestry today when I pulled it up, and it's on the front page of the first page you're looking at. And up in the corner there was this little thing with a one, and I clicked on it, and it was actually I was working on Lewis Chase, who was one of my grandmother's younger brothers, and the person just shot me off this little message in this little area, and it said, "I have some information about Lewis Chase, and I think you might be interested in." So answered her immediately and said, "Yes, please." I think that each one of us holds a piece of the information to the puzzle, and we can help each other and um, delve into, as much as we want to. So I'd love to hear from you. And I don't know if I'll get it tomorrow, but the next day I have another video that's pretty much put together, but I kind of ran out of sunlight now, so I will do it tomorrow or the next day. And I hope you're all having a wonderful time and having fun and smiling. Bye.